So as you guys can see, it is pouring rain here in Anaheim, California. But the problem is I still had a private game planned for today. It is Sunday, August something. Joey, help me out right here with the date. And so the question is whether or not to cancel the game due to this whole Hurricane Hillary thing. On one hand, that seems like the logical thing to do. On the other hand, I asked all the players at the game and they all still want to gamble and they want the game to go. So far, it's only been medium to light rain, which doesn't seem too bad, but if it gets a whole lot worse, I guess that could be problematic, you know, being stranded at a casino without being able to drive away. But it looks like the game will go. So these people want to play, and I'm not going to cancel the game over some rain. Hopefully that's not a decision I regret later on. But for now, game is on, 5100. Let's head to the casino and see how that goes. Okay, so we made it safe despite the inclement weather. Really wasn't too bad aside from some heavy rain. But yeah, here we are. I'm a bit early, so I'm going to set up the table. We're going to play some 5100. There's going to be big pots. And by the way, if you're interested in ever playing this game, hit me up on Instagram and we'll see what we can do. Let's get into some poker. Alright guys, we are underway at this 5100 private game. Here is the cast of characters today. We have Kevin, Dr. P, Tyrone, Pepe, Dentist Dave, Clue, Ling Ling, myself, and lastly, Nate Hill. So pretty fun group, let's get underway. In the first hand, Ling Ling opens to 300 from early position, and I am next to act with pocket jacks. That's a good hand, so I raise it up to 1,000. Dr. P and Pepe both cold call, and Ling Ling calls as well. So the four of us are going to go to a flop of 10-8-4 with 2 diamonds. On a board like this, I'm not really a huge fan of betting a single pair 4 ways, despite the fact that it is an overpair. So I decide to check it when it gets to me, and it gets to Pepe on the button, who bets $2,400. Ling Ling gets out of the way, I call, Dr. P also folds. So heads up to a turn versus Pepe, which comes the deuce of spades, putting a second flush draw on the board. I check it again, this time he checks it back. When he checks it back, I think that's indicative of probably a 1-pair hand at best. So when the river comes the 9 of diamonds, even though it is a sketchy card, as it does introduce potential straights and flushes, 2-pair, etc., I feel like if he had flush draws, he would have bet the turn. So really, unless this gives him 2-pair, we should probably still have the best hand. I decided to put in a bet. I think it's a little bit thin, but I only bet half pot, $4,500. He doesn't think too long before folding, and we take down the first pot of the night. In the next one, middle position opens to 300. There are 2 callers, and I am in the small blind with pocket 8s. Could go either way between calling or re-raising with a hand like this. Being that there's some dead money from the callers in the field, I decide to get aggressive and make it $2,000 to go. Apparently that was a mistake because it gets back to the initial raiser, who makes it $6,500 to go. The other players fold, and now it's back on me with pocket 8s out of position, facing a pretty big raise. And I think folding is probably a little bit better than calling, but we still have a decent hand, and seeing a flop can't be too bad, I suspect. I haven't fact-checked this. This is just intuition, but anyway, I make the call, and we go heads up to a flop, which is not great. It's ace-king 5. In fact, not only is it not great, it's just terrible. I check it, he continues for some amount, I think $4,000, and I release right away. I would have continued on some boards. Ace-King 5 is definitely not one of them. So with that, we move to the next hand, which includes a round of stand-up that's taking place. If you guys don't know what that is, essentially you just have to win a hand to earn yourself a button. The last person to earn a button, meaning the last person to win a hand, they owe everyone else a bounty. Because of that, I decide to raise it up with 7 deuce of hearts, as I am one of the last 2 remaining players in danger of paying everyone the bounty. So 7 deuce suited looks pretty good to me. I make it 300, and then it gets to Dr. P in late position, who makes it 3,000. That's right, from 300 to 3,000. It's no surprise that Dr. P, the man who made this raise, is the only other player who also needs to earn a button and avoid paying that bounty. So this is a battle between 2 players who desperately need to win a hand. It gets back to me, and of course with 7 deuce, we're kind of in a tough spot. Calling is out of the question. Folding makes a ton of sense since his raise is so big. But being that the situation is what it is with the stand-up game in place, I think Dr. P is capable of getting frisky with some hands and just trying to take it down pre-flop, but perhaps doing that with hands that can't withstand an all-in. Worst case scenario, I go all in pre-flop with 7 deuce in my own private game, and is it really that bad to give action? I don't think it is. So I decide to rip it in there for $15,000. That is what he had left in his stack. Sadly for myself, Dr. P actually has a hand. He's got pocket queens. Of course, he's not going anywhere, so he makes the call. And just like that, we have a $30,000 pot underway. Pretty standard hand, 7 deuce versus pocket queens, all in pre-flop. On the first board, we find no help, but somehow on the second board, we flop a 7 and turn a 7. No queen on the river means we end up chopping this one up. Unfortunately, the rules of stand-up indicate that if you run it twice, the first board is the one that counts for the game. So because I lost the first board, I end up having to pay the bounty out to everyone anyway, but hard to complain after chopping this hand in particular. I'm more than okay with the result. Next, it folds to me in the small blind. That's right, everyone has released their cards, and it's just me and Nate Hill left in the blinds. And I've got ace king of diamonds. That is quite a good hand. In games where there's no rake and a big blind ante, I pretty much limp all my hands from the small blind when it folds around to me. So ace king suited is no exception. I toss in the 50. Nate does not agree with that price. Instead of 100, he wants to play for 300. Time to spring the trap. I raise it up to $1,600. And Nate makes the call, so we go heads up to a flop of 9-6 deuce with 1 diamond out there. I decide to bet 2/3 the size of the pot. This is a flop I would sometimes check, so considering I wouldn't be betting too often, I decide to size up a little bit. 2,200 to go. Nate makes the call, and we get a good turn card. It's the ace of hearts. It does bring in a potential flush, but I think at some semi-high frequency, he would raise flush draws on the flop, and even if he didn't, he would likely have the nut flush draw, which is not possible now that the ace of hearts comes out. So all that being said, I think we should continue betting. Would often have bluffs as well, so this hand seems good enough to value bet. I put in a bet of half pot, right around $3,600. Nate thinks for quite some time now. Eventually, he does decide to fold, however, so not a whole lot of action going on so far, but still some interesting hands. And the next one, the $200 straddle is on. Ling Ling limps in from late position. She tosses in the 200, and I'm on the button with pocket queens. I will not be doing any limping with that hand. I make it $1,200 to go. Pepe calls from the straddle, as does Ling Ling. So the three of us go to a flop, which comes 10, 7, 4, 2 diamonds. Much like the earlier hand where I had pocket jacks, we're multi-way, and this isn't necessarily the best board for me, despite having an overpair. So I guess betting is okay since we do have position and the board isn't super connected, but we don't even have a diamond, so I think this is a good one to check back. Turn is the deuce of spades. Pepe checks again. Ling Ling does not check this time. Instead, she leads out for quite a big bet, $3,000. A little bit worrisome perhaps, but of course after playing my hand the way I did, I can't go anywhere just yet. So I call the 3,000, which might get me in some trouble if Pepe recognizes that the best I could have is one pair and maybe applies maximum pressure, but he does not. He just lets it go, and we go to a river, which eliminates all worries. It's the queen of spades, giving me the nuts. Takes me a second to recognize that there are no potential hands that could possibly beat me. But right when I'm realizing that happy conclusion, Ling Ling decides to check it. That is pretty bad news for me. But I think a big bet now makes the most sense because I would likely be checking back single pair holdings. Betting here should either represent quite the strong hand or a bluff. So I decide to bet right around 150% of the pot size. $14,000 into the middle, and she snap folds, later saying that she had 9-8. Kind of a shame that she did give up after missing her straight on the river. But of course, good instincts on her behalf as, like I said, we have the nuts. Next, we are in a straddle round, so playing 50, 100, 200. Pepe opens the action to 700, and I am in the big blind with ace-king suited. Another great hand, so I raise it up to 3,700. But then when it gets back to Pepe, he makes it $15,000. That's right, the old $15,000 raise. Now, myself and Pepe are the only players at the table that have quite the deep stack. I think at this point I was playing around $100,000 or $150,000, and Pepe had like $200K. So Yeah, a lot of money left to play for. And now it's back on me. Being out of position, I think we should mix between raising again and calling. I think raising is probably the way to go, but considering that Pepe's sizing was so large, 3,700 to 15,000, I think calling is a good adjustment to make being up against such a large size. So that's what I do, and we go heads up out of position to a good flop. It's king 9-8 with a heart. So we've got top pair, top kicker, and some backdoor heart potential in case of emergency. I start with a check. Pepe does not let off the gas. He puts in $25,000. Typically, you'd see players make a small bet after all that pre-flop action. Not Pepe. He's not one of those guys. He's here to gamble. I, of course, can't go anywhere just yet, and raising, I don't think, would accomplish much. So I call, and we go to a turn, which is the 7 of diamonds. I check it over to him again, and this time he checks it back, which certainly makes me feel a bit better. It's always slightly uncomfortable when there's a ton of action pre-flop and you have ace-king. End up flopping a king, and you always think to yourself, am I up against pocket aces, maybe even pocket kings? You know, those monsters under the bed are always creeping up on you. But when he checks back the turn, I don't think that's the case. River card is the 8 of spades. Again, I don't really see any point in betting. If we're going to get called, it's probably not by a hand like queens or jacks, so perhaps better to let him bluff if that is what he's up to. I check it again. He checks it back. I most likely have the best hand at this point. I turn it over, and Pepe, without showing me his cards, asks me if I would like to chop the pot. I jokingly tell him no problem, and he says, all right, let's do it. And then he turns over ace-king offsuit. So yeah, it's a pretty casual environment here during the Sunday private games. Of course, I was not going to chop this pot. Come on, guys. It's $80,000. But it turns out I had no choice. We both flop a king with ace-king. Life goes on. In this next one, Ling Ling opens the button to $600. And once more, I've got a premium holding pocket queens again. I'm in the small blind this time, so I raise it up to $2,800. Going a little bit bigger, taking into consideration that I'm out of position. Gets back around to her. She started the hand with around $15,000 and decides all of that money is going into the middle. She jams all in. I, of course, call right away. If you've got me beat, congratulations, Ling Ling. Can't fold pocket queens. We decide to run it once, and flop comes down 7-6-6. Turn seals the deal. It's another queen. We find a set of queens once more. Well, rather a full house this time. River is the king of diamonds, so unless she's got pocket kings, we are going to win this one. Turns out she does not, and we take down this $30,000 pot. And with that, we move to the last hand of the night, in which the straddle is still on, so playing 50, 100, 200, and I am once again one of the last two players in a round of stand-up, meaning I need to win a hand or I pay everyone else this bounty. And I'm a little too embarrassed to pay it twice in one night. So when I look down at Queen 5 offsuit, I decide that's good enough to try to win this hand. I make it $600 to go. Pepe calls in the big blind, and Ling Ling defends the straddle. So we go 3 ways to a flop, which is not bad. It's king 8-7 with 2 spades. Of course, I have absolutely nothing, but if a spade comes, I can represent the flush. If some straightening cards come, I can represent the straight. And that's because I have the queen of spades and the 5 of diamonds. I'll be the first to admit that is some wishful thinking, but just letting you guys into my train of thought as I decide to bet this flop when they check it to me. 1100 into the middle. Pepe calls, Ling Ling does not call. So we go to a turn, hoping it's one of those good ones that I can continue blasting on. And sure enough, it's the perfect one. The 6 of spades, meaning I could have a hand like 5-4 suited, and of course a queen high flush, all possible. So when he checks, I decide to continue applying pressure. $3,500. I'm hoping he lets it go, and he does not let it go. Instead, he calls. That's all right. We still have one more opportunity to win this hand on the river. We could always get there also if a spade or a straightening card comes out, but that's not what we get. It's the 10 of clubs, leaving me with queen high. But like I said on the turn, I could still have all sorts of stuff like straights, flushes, any 9 even makes a straight now. So when he checks, I decide to fire one more bullet. Fingers crossed as I toss in $11,000, and my heart breaks as Pepe snap calls. I let him know he's got it. I turn over the queen 5 unsuited, and my man has flopped himself a set with pocket 8s and calls all the way down. Can't really blame him. It's hard to make 3 of a kind. It is a scary board, however, so maybe I would have felt a little bit better if he thought longer about it. He does not. Instead, he rips off the Band-Aid right away, and we lose this $33,000 pot with Queen 5 offsuit. It's amazing, isn't it? You play bad hands, you typically get bad results. Poker, I guess, is not that complicated of a game. Anyway, that was the last interesting one for today's session. Kind of a quick one today, but as always, I hope you all enjoyed the hands. All right, so once again reporting from the stage here at Hustler. Private game just ended, and it was a pretty fun group today, as you guys saw from the lineup. If you guys aren't familiar, those were a bunch of great characters. Unfortunately for me, it didn't really go as planned, and I ended up either breaking even or losing a few $1,000. I'm not exactly sure, but as always, Joey will include the results right here. And that marks another loss, which continues this downswing I've been on for the past few months. I'm down like 300K across, I believe, the last 3 to 4 months, which of course is the nature of high stakes gambling. You're gonna go on these massive swings, and considering how hot I ran like the first 6 months of the year, it's hard to complain, but still not exactly the most fun. Hopefully we can turn things around pretty soon. If not, then, you know, that's poker. As always, thank you guys for watching. I hope you all enjoyed the vlog. I am gonna go try to drive home in this hurricane. Hopefully it's a little more calm now. From what I've heard, it's not as bad as people were thinking, but yeah, if you guys are seeing this video, that means I made it home safe. Subscribe if you haven't, like the video, do all that stuff that I'm supposed to ask you to do. If you don't, that's okay, nothing's gonna happen. I'm just gonna keep making these videos. And until next time, good luck at your local tables. Peace.